Today we drilled a couple of techniques that really cemented the idea, an idea that I've had that's been growing on me over the past, couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of weeks of doing jiu-jitsu. And that's the idea of giving your opponent a problem, and then whatever their solution is will present the next problem in your set of problems that you're going to give to them. So for example, in this closed guard position, I can come up and try to do a sweep on my opponent, but if they push me forward, they land straight into the guillotine. So one problem leads to another, and if they solve one problem that I'm giving to them, they're landing directly into another problem. And I feel like that is one of the main lessons of jiu-jitsu, and it's a lesson that I'm just starting to understand a little bit and trying to implement into my game. And kind of a light switch, a light bulb moment that came on in this last class was this technique that we're drilling. So basically, the opponent starts in the closed guard, and they're trying to posture up, they're trying to get out of the closed guard. And as the person who has their opponent in the closed guard, you're either going to try to sweep them, and if they're able to counter that, they are going to land in your front headlock, your front guillotine headlock. And so you really have two ways to improve your position from the closed guard here. You can either sweep them effectively into full mount, which is a great position, but arguably an even better position is if they're able to counteract that sweep and pull their body back, they're very vulnerable to the front headlock, which is, the submission finish. So probably an even worse position for them than having you mounted on top of them. So I'm drilling this technique with Joe at the moment, and what we're really trying to do here is not give each other the full energy, the full treatment, but just feel around and see if the person in closed guard can posture up and kind of get out of that head pulled down, deep postured position, and the person, me, with the closed guard is trying to either, when they posture up, go into that sweep, and if they don't give it to me, land them in that front headlock that you see right there. And that's kind of that feels like a very strong position for me, a strong sequence. Because really, at the end of the day, if you're going to miss the sweep, that's fine. You can just put them straight into the front headlock, which is probably an even better position. So that's a really powerful thing, and a really powerful lesson that I feel that I learned, from this class, which is don't try to take your game plan down one straight line. Try to have a few branches where it can change depending on what your opponent is giving you back, how your opponent is solving the problems you're giving to them. And if you have branches on your system, branches on your techniques, then you can also have an answer to all of their answers to your problems, and eventually continue incrementing through better positions, iteratively getting through to better positions, and then eventually be in a position where you can hit a submission. So once we drilled that technique, me and Joe, me and Dalton started drilling that technique, but we were giving each other, the full treatment. As we said, it was 100% energy, and really trying not to let the other person get the sweep or posture up or get the front headlock. And I was finding that Dalton was definitely better at this than me. It seemed like he knew a little bit more about what he was doing. Maybe it came a little bit more naturally to him, or maybe he's drilled this before, but I was having a lot of trouble posturing out of his closed guard. So definitely something that I could learn to improve on here. And you can see, look, he got the sweep there. Definitely like staying really, really tight, and that's something that in general with jiu-jitsu, like you can see here, I'm not very tight. I definitely struggle with staying tight all the time, and it's something that I have to be very conscious of. And as soon as you stop staying tight, I feel like that's where you become vulnerable to attacks and to sweeps, because I feel like as a larger guy, a lot of what I have in my arsenal is weight, strength, and pressure. And so if I, even for a moment, stop using my weight to my advantage, stop using my pressure to my advantage, that's when, my most favorable attributes stop working in my favor. So I have to be very conscious of trying to be really, really heavy. And I think now I'm just starting to close my guard higher up the body, and I'm recognizing that the low closed guard is not as favorable as having your legs higher up the body. And with my private the other day, Elliot explained to me that the higher my legs are up the body in the closed guard, the more of the opponent's body is shut down, and the less that they can do to defend the arms and that kind of thing. And so from a higher closed guard, I can move into more effective attacks and things like that. But right now I'm just trying to either do a sweep or land Dalton in the front headlock guillotine position. And so I'm just trying to feel out these sweeps and he's giving me a lot of trouble because I feel like he has a bit more experience in these sweeps than me, or maybe he's just a little bit naturally more inclined to know exactly what to do in these sorts of positions. But I think the main lesson and the main takeaway that I've learned from this particular class and drilling these techniques is that just because you miss one position that you try to get into, or you miss one sweep that you try to do, doesn't mean that that hasn't opened up another opportunity that might be even more favorable. And so now I'm going to be keeping my eye out and saying, hey, if I miss this sweep, or if I miss this, transition to a new position, maybe there's another door, another opportunity that's opened up to me that might be an even a more favorable position for me. So it really feels like this class was a significant class for me, just for learning that sort of core fundamental jiu-jitsu idea. And I just as the buzzer went, I got the sweep there. So that was a good feeling to know that at least I'd done one pretty well. So now me and Joe decided to roll. And this was a really good roll. I learned something really interesting about the Americana from rolling with Joe. Because what Joe does to avoid the Americana is he pushes his hips up in the air and puts all of his weight on his arm. And so even though you have his arm all the way down to the mat, which I was able to do in this roll, I wasn't able to slide my hand under to get the Americana fully locked in. And he didn't explain this to me until the very end of the roll. And so pretty much the majority of this roll is me just trying to figure out, see, I've got the Americana grip. I feel like I know exactly what to do here, and I feel like I'll be able to finish here, but I'm unable to get my hand underneath. And you can see that Joe's hips are elevated off the mat. So he has all of his weight on that elbow, which is preventing me from getting my other hand underneath the arm and finishing the Americana. So what I should be doing here, I think, is if his hips are elevated off the mat, maybe I could be transitioned, if I'm in side control, transition to full mount, and then use my feet to debase his feet, take all of that weight off the elbow, and apply the finish from there. But I didn't realize at the time that the reason that I was unable to get the Americana was because his hips are elevated off the mat. And you see, as soon as that arm comes down, his hips come off the mat as a defense to that Americana attack. So that's a really powerful defense that I've never seen before, but was completely shut down my Americana. So that's really interesting. And you can see that Joe has really strong arms. He's obviously a very strong person. So that probably did help a little bit, but it seems to me like that lifting the hips off the mat there was a super strong attack. You can see that my feet are curled in around his feet. So what I think I should do while attacking that Americana is just push both of his feet to the side, or maybe one of his feet to the side, get rid of all of the pressure on the elbow from lifting his hips off the mat, and then I would be able to finish off the Americana from there. But you can see, even though I'm in an incredibly dominant position in this roll, I was unable to get the Americana at all. So what I thought I'd do is I'd transition to the gift wrap and maybe take the back and see if I can do some kind of choke or something like that. But the back is not my favorite position. It's not the position I'm most proficient in. I did learn. In fact, that might have been the tap there, possibly. But I have learned some back attacks from the gi, but not in no gi. So I'm still a bit of a beginner from the back. So basically, what we're doing here is Joe is explaining to me now exactly how he's putting so much pressure on his arm and not letting me get in. And you saw that as soon as he took pressure off his hips, he put his hips back down to the mat, I was able to get my hand in and finish the Americana. So he's just explaining to me if you're in this position and you take all of your weight off your hips and put it on the arm, the Americana is very difficult from there. Yeah. So this is Gavin, the next person I roll with, and we've got some pretty good rolls in here. Gavin is another really strong opponent. You can tell that he's got a lot of muscle. So definitely a very powerful, very explosive, scrambly opponent. So we had some really cool rolls, and we were going to start from standing, but then we were told that at least one person should sit down just because there's so many people on the mat. So we both decided to sit down, and I immediately pulled guard. So I'm trying to, like I say in every video, improve my guard game, because I feel like a lot of the fights, a lot of the roles I have, they just end up in guard, and it would be good for me to know what to do from guard and just really refine what I'm doing from guard. But I feel like I have learnt now what I prefer to do in guard, and this is the front headlock position that we learnt in class today. And so it didn't end in the finish, but it ended up with me able to sweep into the mount, which is a pretty nice position for me. And then I think Gavin just panicked here and basically just gave me the back straight away. So that put me into an even better position. And I felt like from here, I could probably start threatening the rear naked choke. However, because I'm on top and not on bottom, it would probably be easier if I pull Gavin onto my stomach and go to my back if I was going to do the rear naked choke. And again, like, my rear naked choke isn't my best move, and it's probably an area where I could improve on. And so I basically just abandoned the rear naked choke and started working for the arms. But you can see that Gavin is extending his arms quite a lot, so that would make them very vulnerable to attack. But we just took a break here because I think he got a stitch or a cramp in his ribs or something like that, so we took a couple seconds, but we pretty much got right back into it. And from rolling with Gavin, I noticed that because his arms were extending quite a lot, and using that explosive power that he has resulted in him using, really fully extending his arms quite a lot. That felt to me like it would be a good vector for attack for me. You see the arms are just totally extended here, so I'm trying to establish grips on at least one of the arms and then go for the Americana. But I feel that if he was leaving his arms in a little bit further, closer to his body, I should say, then I wouldn't have been able to as easily get the Americana there. And so that's how I got the tap there. But after that, I'm just pulling guard straight away again. And it feels like I am getting a little bit better at knowing what to do from the guard. I'm a little bit more confident in the guard. I'm also trying to keep my legs a little bit higher up the body. I'm trying to stay conscious of that. I mean, they're not crazy high, but I'm definitely waiting for an opportune moment to do a sweep and get into mount, and I'm having some success with that now. So it definitely feels like I'm improving in that respect. But you can see that Gavin is a very powerful, explosive grappler, and so I had to be very conscious of being willing to shift position. So I transitioned there all the way to the back, and I think Gavin might have made the mistake there of turning in too much and allowing me to take the back there, or at least be in a better position to take the back. But he has my arm trapped in between his legs. He has very strong legs, and so I was finding it quite difficult to get my arm out of his legs, and it seemed like with his game, he gravitated towards trapping my arms in his legs a couple of times throughout this roll, which was something I hadn't really seen very much before. So I just decided to sit on his head and basically pull my arm out of the position. But now he's trapping his own arm in there, because I guess he must feel threatened for the arm bar, and so that's what... that's kind of what I felt might be a good next move. But once that happened, it didn't really feel like I had the armbar, so I transitioned straight to the back again. But now that he's keeping very tight compared to before, where his arms were very, very extended, I'm finding it a lot more difficult to isolate an arm. And so I'm just basically trying to float on top until I can get into a better position. And see, he extended his arms again, and as soon as he did that, I think I'm in a way better position now to start an attack. But one of the things I learned, and the reason I got the tap there, is because I'm putting a lot of pressure in the mount, lifting my knees up, lifting my hips up, and basically putting all of my weight onto the opponent. And because I am quite a heavy person, at about 100 kilos, I'm probably a little bit more than 100 kilos now that I've been in Canada hanging out, that was enough to put enough pressure on Gavin to get the tap. And I don't know if you noticed, but my belly is big today. I just before I came to class, I ate like a mountain of sushi with my girlfriend, which was probably not the best idea, but it seemed to go okay. But maybe that 100 kilos of weight is 102 kilos now because of all the sushi I ate before class. So that was rolling with Gavin. That was a really good roll, and it also just made me realize extending the arms away from your body is such a danger in Jiu-Jitsu. As soon as your arm is away from your body, you're vulnerable. And so the lesson from that roll for me is to just, as much as possible, keep my arms as close to my body as possible, particularly when the fight is on the ground. Maybe not so much when we're fighting for a takedown or grip fighting like me and Joe are right now. But if I have Joe on top of me, or if I have Gavin on top of me, I really don't want to have my arms extended away from my body, because that's going to leave me open to arm bars, kimuras, americanas, all of those arm attacks that are just not really possible if my arms are close to my chest. And so what I'm doing now is I'm basically just waiting for an ankle pick. The ankle pick is the takedown that I really like if my opponent is standing but I'm seated. So I was trying to distract him there with my arm and then grab the ankle. Keep hold of the ankle all the way until I'm basically into side control. And that seems to be a pretty nice submission for me, both in the gi and in the no gi. I feel like in the gi it's a little bit easier because you can kind of put your hand around the back of the ankle, but if they pull their ankle away, you can actually grab onto the gi pants a little bit better. And so that felt to me like in the gi it's even easier, but in the no gi I've had some success doing that as well. And I've been trying as much as possible to transition into the mount when I've seen the opportunity, but I'm not actually sure if I'm more effective in the mount than I am in side control. It feels to me like in side control, I'm a lot more effective than in the mount for getting the Americana. But of course, like, you can always transition from the mount into side control, but you can't always transition from side control into the mount. You know what I mean? It's easier to go from mount into side control. If someone bumps you, you just get low and swing your leg around. So maybe if I'm in the mount, I can always go back to side control easily. At least that feels like a natural thing to me. But as far as going from the other way, that's not always as easy. So I'm just trying to do the Americana here, now knowing the sneaky tricks of Joe with keeping the hips in the air. And I think I actually do manage to get the tap here by sliding my other arm in from the wrist down. Or maybe the buzzer goes off, actually. I think actually the buzzer might have gone off there. Oh no, we're still going. I think we decided to still go. And my camera just fell down like momentarily. I actually roll with that guy as well in a second. So you'll be able to see that. So yeah, I actually did manage to get the Americana there because I slid my other arm in from the actual like top of Joe's wrist rather than trying to go underneath his tricep. I got through the wrist and then just slid my arm all the way down from the other end. And then Joe basically said to me, someone's messing around with your camera, have a look over there. And when I looked, he basically jumped on me and grabbed the Kimura grip. But it didn't work out. I was still on the back, so we kind of kept going from there a little bit. But yeah, it is fun to like meet fun people at Jiu-Jitsu, and like there are a couple of people who I've met at Jiu-Jitsu who seem really cool and like who I always look out for when I go to the gym, and we seem to drill the techniques together and roll together. So yeah, it's always great to like make friends and just have a bit of fun at Jiu-Jitsu. But something I'm doing now in the mount, which I wasn't doing before, is hooking my feet in with my opponent's feet, keeping my weight really heavy. And it seems to me like this is probably a really uncomfortable position for Joe. And so when I do that position and I put that pressure on, what I'm expecting my opponent to do is make some sort of mistake in a kind of panic response to get out of that position, and that is what I want to capitalize on. And that idea stems from the original idea that I talked about at the beginning of this video, which is present a problem to your opponent, and depending on what their solution to that problem is, it's going to get them deeper into the set of problems down the line and put myself in a better position. And so, that is an example of that. With all my weight on top of Joe, I'm expecting him to make a mistake that I can capitalize on and get further down the line, further down my sequence into submission. So that's kind of the thought process there. Whether it ended up that way is a different story, but that's definitely my thought process there. But it seems to me now that I am comfortable in the mount and I am attacking those Americanas. Like I just got the tap there. Now that I know the hip pressure trick, mount is something I am gravitating towards and becoming more comfortable in. And I think one of the reasons for that is because I realize now that if someone bumps me and I'm willing to transition from the mount into side control, then I'm more than happy to do that. And side control is a perfectly reasonable position for me to be in. It's perfectly advantageous for me to be in side control. And so this is another role. I'm sorry if you're watching this, I can't remember your name, but this guy was and I'll say this about everybody, but this guy was super strong, and also this guy was incredibly technical. This felt like a very technical, not that I'm a very technical person, but it felt like my most technical role that I've done in this gym so far. But there was one more role after this that felt even more technical. But this guy, just look how he's manipulating my feet and my legs. He's putting me in so many different problematic positions for me that I'm really just reacting to what he's doing and not really putting in my own attacks at all. I'm just trying to kind of make sure I'm shutting down his attacks. But he definitely feels like an incredibly technical opponent. But now that I've pulled guard, I'm feeling a little bit safe. But you can just tell that this guy has so many different techniques and so many different kind of problems he's posing to my closed guard. So I'm just trying to kind of feel out what he's going to do next. But you'll see in a moment that he starts passing my guard here. And rolling with bigger opponents, it's definitely a completely different game than rolling with a smaller opponent. The pressure thing is something that I'm not really that used to. because I'm 6'3", it's quite rare for me to find an opponent who's like significantly bigger than me, like 6'7", or has like 40 or 50 pounds on me. That's not common for me. But I feel like this guy probably had quite a bit of weight on me, maybe like 30 pounds, and he was a couple inches taller than me as well. So this was a good opportunity for me to roll with someone who was larger, had more strength on me, and all of that kind of thing. So he did manage to break out of my guard, and so now I have to try to put him back into guard pretty much. And so now I'm trying to get on top, but you can see this guy, he's even comfortable with inverting, which for a big guy is quite impressive. He does have that flexibility to invert, and I wasn't able to stack him and get into side control. And that would normally be the way, particularly for a bigger opponent, but also a smaller opponent. I would try to stack them upside down, and then get them into side control from there. But since this guy was able to invert, it was still problematic for me to get him into side control. And so I did manage to stack out and get sort of to the back, but he shrimped out just at the right time and got me back into, not a good position for me, not side control for me. And so now he's scrambling to get me back into the guard. And there was the sweep, and now I'm in a pretty terrible position, which is his side control. And you can see he's already isolating that arm, and I'm feeling quite a lot of pressure now from a kind of, I guess it would be like an arm triangle setup here, but this is already like a super uncomfortable position for me, and I should have kept my knees up there and not allowed him to transition to mount. But you can see he's setting up the arm triangle even more, and there was the tap just from that squeeze. So I think the thing to take away from that roll, something that I could have improved on there, was to keep my knees in and keep fighting to reestablish guard, because I think there might have been an opportunity there for me to reestablish guard if I had known exactly what to do. So thank you for that roll. That was a lot of top pressure. So now it's me and Gavin again. It's fun to roll with Gavin because he's obviously very strong and like very explosive and very scrambly. So it's been good to kind of become more of a fluid player and be willing to move into new positions and not try to hold on to positions too much, because I think that something that I've done as a beginner is, once I'm in a position like mount or inside control, I don't want to give it up. I don't want to transition into another position because I want to keep that position. But that can be a problem because, as you're losing a position, now is the time to transition into a new position and be a fluid player, rather than just holding on for dear life and then ending up on the bottom when you never wanted to be in the bottom in the first place. And so rolling with Gavin has kind of forced me to be more fluid and be more willing to transition into new positions, because he's so explosive. He can just explode out of the mount or out of a position that I might want to keep hold of. So I'm just trying to, I'm moving positions, not sticking in one position, and just trying to stay on top and trying to stay fluid as possible. But I think one of the disadvantages of being explosive and being really scrambly, especially in this role, is that sometimes you give up something that puts you into a worse position than you were in before. So like, let's say I'm in side control and then Gavin explodes and requires me to move to north-south or move to somewhere else, but then gives up his back, and now I'm in the back, which is even worse than it was before. So I think like you can take advantage of opponents who are explosive more than technical and strong more than technical, because sometimes they, without realizing it, will put you in a better position or give you the opportunity to move into a better position. But there you see again, he's using his legs to trap my arm, but I was able to get my arm out and then basically transition into mount, and then I got my ankle trapped again. So you'll see me now, I'm going to try and use my other leg to kind of pry that captured foot out, but I don't think I was in the right position to do that. I wasn't right over the top, because Gavin is doing a good job of not letting me flatten his back on the mat. And if I'd have flattened his back onto the mat, I would have had a much better opportunity to recover that foot. But because we were both spazzing out and scrambling around so much, we were asked to move a little bit further down the mat. So we came back into half guard. But like, as you can tell from this video, I've been rolling again with lots of different people, lots of different body types, and I really feel like that is going to be something that improves my jiu-jitsu the most. And I'll just say as well, the gift wrap here, you can see that I've trapped Gavin's arm around his neck with my hand, and so now that arm is pretty much totally immobilized. And there have been instances in the past where I've been able to pull that wrist all the way back and kind of squeeze enough for the submission there, but that doesn't feel like a very technical submission to me, so I decided not to go for that one in this instance. But I think if I'd pulled his wrist all the way around and then kind of hugged his arms and squeezed, that could have been kind of like an arm triangle situation. But now I'm just trying to stay as fluid as possible, stay as on top as possible, and not really try to crank a submission or try to go for a submission too early, and just keep on top, keep establishing position. Because one of the things that I need to realize, and I need to remember, is that if you're on top of someone like this for 5 minutes, they're going to be exhausted after 5 minutes. You don't have to necessarily panic and jump into the submission through fear of losing the submission that isn't even there in the first place. As long as you're on top and you're putting in a lot of pressure, you're wearing your opponent down, and you're not necessarily wearing yourself down that much. So anyway, this is the final roll of the class. And again, I'm really sorry that I don't remember your name, but we have rolled before. I've rolled with this guy once in the gi, and this is once in no gi. And this is an insanely flexible person. This guy, he's incredibly flexible, very lean, so he's able to, do a lot with his hips and move his hips up. And this felt to me like probably the most technical jiu-jitsu that I've ever done. I was trying really, really hard not to be too muscly, because I knew this guy was going to be able to wear me out just because of how flexible he is and how tight being inside his guard is going to be. And so I ended up in a really bad position right now, which is in this guy's guard, which is definitely somewhere I don't want to be because of how flexible this guy is. I know that he's going to be able to triangle me. He's going to be able to armbar me. Just look how fluidly his legs are able to move back. Like if someone's in my guard, there's no way I can move like this. I'm nowhere near as flexible as this. So I'm just fighting for my life here. I'm trying so hard not to let that elbow fall out between the legs, and I just about managed to get it back in, which kind of shut down the threat of a triangle. But that was really, really close. So my game plan here is just to stay as heavy as possible, as tight as possible, and just basically wait for him to make a mistake so that I can break the guard, come out of the guard, and hopefully establish side control. But I'm really conscious of just how dangerous those legs are, and just how easily he's going to be able to pull his leg out of nowhere, wrap it around my head, and go into an armbar, go into a triangle, or anything like that. So you can see I'm trying to stay as close onto his body, put as much pressure on his body as I can. And I'm having a little bit of success doing that now. But at the same time, I'm not going to be able to get into any advantageous position just by applying pressure to this guy's body on top. So I'm really just trying to wait for an opening. And as soon as he gives me an opening, I'm going to try to establish a better position. And so something as well that I'm finding is really important is having my arms on the inside, establishing inside arm control. You see, I'm grabbing both the triceps like that, and he's trying to do inside control as well. And then I'm trying to go back into inside control, staying tight so I can get back into inside control. So we're really just stalemating ourselves in this situation right now. So that leg coming up, that's me just trying to do the first steps of a guard pass, but he's pulling me all the way down again. And so I think we both recognize each other's game. And here I'm so close to losing the back. I'm so close. He almost took my back there. So, I feel like every time he makes a move, I have to reset back into deep pressure into the closed guard. But for now, I am surviving. I am, staying in a relatively neutral position. And now I've trapped that arm, I feel like I might be able to start making some moves to get out here. So one of my techniques is to stand up, and once they try to hook my leg, sit on their foot, because that's immobilizing the arm. And that led to me being able to break through the guard and get into more of a half guard position, which is great. I'm very, very, very happy to be out of the guard now. But you can see that I'm super, super exhausted. And so I'm finding it difficult to keep this guy's back on the mat and stay in the position. And because he was able to come up on one foot there, he was able to put me back into the closed guard. So another stalemate. All of that work that I'd done to get out of the closed guard now lost, and I'm back in the closed guard again. And you can see, I was talking about this before, he was keeping his closed guard so high up my back, which was really shutting down all of the posturing effort that I was doing. I couldn't sit up, I couldn't posture up when I needed to. And I also felt very threatened that when I postured up, he was going to push me into the full mount. And once I was mounted by this guy, it was going to be a serious problem for me, and I probably would have been submitted. So I was very conscious of not being swept, not being triangled, not being armbarred, not being anything. So Yeah, that was a very, very difficult role, and I was trying to be as technical as possible. But yeah, man, that was the class today, and thank you for watching the whole thing if you made it this far, and make sure you subscribe if you'd like to follow my journey all the way to black belt. It's going very well so far. I mean, I'm doing jiu-jitsu all the time, making a lot of content, so yeah, I'm feeling very positive about how everything's going, and hopefully you can join the journey with me. And if you have any tips for me, if you can see any holes in my game or anything you think that I can improve on, please let me know in the comments. I'd be really appreciative of any tips or hints or tricks or whatever you think might help my game improve. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.